Good evening, Facebook friends, citizens of America and the planet. Welcome to tonight's Fireside Chat. We have a very special guest tonight, Jabari Brisport, who is a city council candidate running with the Green Party, also with the DSA, a wonderful example of how the movements of the left are coming together as social movements and as a political force to fight and to win. And we're going to hear from Jabari in just a minute. First, just a couple words about the continuing resistance that is rising up, sweeping the planet, and the crises that we're facing that are requiring that we rise up. So first and foremost, Puerto Rico. Our hearts go out to the people struggling in Puerto Rico who are facing not only a Category 4 hurricane, but a Category 10 neoliberal crisis, really with decades of plundering of the people and the natural resources of Puerto Rico, a real crisis of austerity over the last several decades with incredible disinvestment. The trade agreements, the global trade agreements, especially really devastated the economy of Puerto Rico. It's been in a tailspin. It doesn't have sovereignty. It can't really have a voice in the most critical economic and social policies that it has to contend with. So, yes, it can elect its local officials, but they are essentially overruled by Congress, where Puerto Rico does not have a vote. So Puerto Rico is really sort of a poster child of what's wrong with neoliberalism, including the climate crisis that has delivered for us. So the people of Puerto Rico are struggling right now in the face of this crisis, and all of us, can continue just urging that Puerto Rico be prioritized. It's not just enough to send the aid. We need to get the aid into people's hands. And Donald Trump may be congratulating himself many times over what a great job he's doing. But unfortunately, if the aid isn't actually getting to people, we got a problem. He says, oh, it's an island and it's not so easy. Well, I hope he isn't just discovering the fact that Puerto Rico is an island. This needs to be built into the relief plan. So there's absolutely no excuse to delay here. Airdrop the aid, pretend this is Iraq or Afghanistan, You can get there, call out the troops if you need to, get the aid into people's hands. People are on the verge of dying massively from lack of food and water, not to mention the collapse of this dam that put 70,000 people at risk. So we could talk about that one for a long time, but we're going to move on in just one moment. Quickly, Korea also continues to teeter on the brink with this exchange of provocations, of name-calling, of just, the battle of, what shall we say, not the most diplomatic leaders who are trading insults and escalating threats and actions, actually, with Donald Trump calling out North Korea, calling the leader Little Rocket Man, against the advice of his advisors, hurling epithets at North Korea and vowing to destroy, or saying that we may have to destroy North Korea, to totally destroy North Korea, were the words that he used. North Korea then says this is a declaration of war. North Korea then says, well, they may then explode a hydrogen bomb over the oceans, which would be absolutely devastating to the creatures and the people of the planet. It, exposes everybody to radiation, to which then the U.S. flies our fighter jets further north along the coast than any time in this century. And then North Korea says, well, they may be shooting down our airplanes, even outside of their airspace. So, what's wrong with this picture is that we could fix this. There is a diplomatic option here, which actually North Korea and Russia and China have all been calling for. It's called the freeze solution. We freeze the war games. North Korea has been developing bombs and missiles in the face of U.S. first strike nuclear threat. and war games, which have rehearsed that threat. So we need to stand up now, all of us, and demand that we have diplomacy going forward. We should not be pushed into the brink of a global nuclear disaster because the war industry and the neoliberal military machine is pushing us in that direction. We need to stand up. You can go to Stop THAAD. It rhymes with sad, but it's THAAD. That's the missile system that the U.S. has inflicted on South Korea. StopTHAAD.org and sign the petition calling for the freeze. So now let's turn to the resistance here, because we've got this big machine and all the devastation that it is causing in the face of the 99% who are saying we don't need it and we don't want it. So we have heroic candidates who are standing up to lead the fight in our communities where we can start winning it right now in this election. So let me introduce Jabari Brisport, who is running for city council in New York City as a Green Party candidate and also on the DSA's ballot line as well. An example of the convergence and the power of the people when we get together as a broad front for economic, social, racial, and climate justice. All for one for all. We are unstoppable together. So Jabari Brisport, welcome. Tell our listeners, our viewers, just a few words about what prompted you to run in this election.
Sure. Well, first, let me just say thanks again for having me on. Again, Jill, it was such an honor and a pleasure to volunteer for you last year and then vote for you. I was telling all my friends about you as a Jill bro, for lack of a better word. But after Donald Trump's election, I got frustrated with protesting. I've been doing activism, protesting, and letter writing and phone calls for 10 years now, and it stopped feeling like it was enough. So I decided to throw my hat in the ring and attempt to change politics from the inside as a member of City Hall. Awesome.
And I hear that you are just, firing up a storm there. You just came out of a primary where you won hands down, and I hear you're
89% of the vote.
89%? That's
yeah.
Awesome. That's really great. And I know you've taken a really clear stand on the issues that are really just hitting people in the gut. Housing, gentrification, and schools, and jobs. Tell us what are the leading issues and the positions that you've taken on them.
Yeah. The biggest wedge issue in the district is something called the Bedford Union Armory. It's a city-sized block that was an armory, built for armaments and war, but has been sitting empty for decades now. And residents of the community were hoping to get that converted to a community recreation center so that children in the community would have things to do. They wouldn't be out just left to no good. And what happened was a developer came by and their proposal said yes to the recreation center, but in order to pay for it, they would build a bunch of luxury condos, to which the community said absolutely not. That neighborhood is experiencing hyper-gentrification. It's one of the gentrification fronts in Brooklyn right now, with parts of it having thousands of evictions per year, 1,000 eviction cases. And so it's been very contentious right now because the community has risen up and said absolutely not to that. And what I proposed is something that's leftist and more socialist. It's a community land trust, and that's where the land would stay public, and people would organize into a nonprofit, and they would steward the land with nonprofit developers.
Awesome. And I'll have you. First, let me just ask our viewers to please like this conversation and share it so that we can share the power and get the word out, because this is exactly the kind of campaign that where we get traction, where the rubber hits the road, where we seize this vast neoliberal machine and we shake it down and we basically throw the bums out and we get real representatives of the people into office. So let's get the word out so we can support this campaign. This is a winning campaign and a winning candidate. So like this conversation, share it, and post your comments and any questions that you have, and we'll come to them shortly. Say a few words, Jabari, about a community land trust and how that works.
Yes. So essentially, some of the words the description is in the name. So members of the community community leaders would incorporate as a nonprofit, and then we would steward the land, give the land over to them to steward as opposed to a for-profit developer. And then they can meet with a nonprofit developer, architects, housing experts, and whoever in order to develop a plan that really serves the community's needs as opposed to the profit lines of a wealthy developer. And then obviously that needs funding, so we can increase subsidies from the city and state level. And my campaign has actually proposed 2 additional taxes on wealthy landlords and developers to help fund things like this. One would be a tax on vacancy, and the other would be a tax on property flipping.
Fabulous. Awesome. Tell us about healthcare. Now that the zombie Trump healthcare plan has died a faceless death for the 3rd time in a row, so that the people can live. But we need to live better and more, and we know that we can do more with healthcare. What is that struggle like in your community? We need Medicare for all, but you can't do it really at the city level. It really takes a national plan. But how are you pushing this forward as best as you can at the city level?
The biggest push we can do, at the city level, what we see is hospital closings or hospitals attempting to join together into trusts in order to, pool funding as like last-ditch efforts to save. But the biggest push in New York would probably come at the state level, where we've had something on the table for the past 3 years in a row, which was a single payer for the state of New York. And that's something that's gotten passed by the Assembly 3 years in a row and then died in the Senate because, funnily enough, people don't know this. New York's a super liberal state, but our Senate's actually dominated by Republicans due to gerrymandering and this breakaway section of Democrats who just caucus with the Republicans for some reason. So it keeps dying in the Senate, but hopefully we could get Medicare for all at the state level if we continue to struggle to get at the national level.
Awesome. That's great. And that would certainly do the trick. California had the option to do it, and has overwhelmingly Democratic majorities in both houses. I think it had passed, It passed the House and was waiting on the Senate, and the Senate took it off the table. The Speaker of the House, the Democrat in charge, took it off the table. So, not exactly putting their money where their mouth is. So we have to keep pushing, and we need elected leaders like you, because when we have city councilors who are standing up, they can actually, the community can instruct their city council, and the city council can pass a resolution to go to the legislature and twist the arm of the legislature to actually respond to the people. So we have a voice in the legislature by getting Jabari elected. So let's keep pushing for that. Tell us a little bit, climate change. New York knows what climate change is about, because you had about 12 feet, I think, of storm surge covering Manhattan.
Hurricane Sandy,
the hurricane and the superstorm. New York knows what climate change is about. How does climate change hit your policies at the local level?
Yeah, well, a big push on climate that we can do in New York is to divest the city from fossil fuels. And, New York City has New York is a really big city. We have a huge pension fund for public employees, and currently billions of dollars currently invested into oil and gas companies and fossil fuel companies. And New York actually did a great progressive leap in divesting from private prisons earlier this year. So I believe the next step we should do is to divest billions of dollars from fossil fuels and shift them into clean energy.
Great. Say a few words about police reform. St. Louis, last week, St. Louis was struggling with what looked like Michael Brown all over again, with scores of people who were being arrested, protesting the another police murder where the police officer who had said he was going to shoot his victim before they actually encountered each other. This was after a high-speed chase, and he told his partner, I'm going to shoot that guy, and in fact he did. And there's evidence that even a weapon appears to have been planted on the victim that contains the DNA of the police officer, not of the victim. So it appears to have been a planted weapon, yet he was let off basically scot-free. So, how's this looking in New York, the whole issue of police violence and racism?
Yeah, what my campaign is really proposing is to turn the whole thing on its head, and I've been saying we need to even leapfrog community policing and go straight to community like led policing, and community controlled policing. And so something that's right now on the table is the Right to Know Act, which is common sense legislation. It's that if a police officer stops you, you have the right to know who they are and why, for lack of a better word. And then beside that one that's on the table, what my campaign would introduce is a civilian review board that's elected by people and citizens rather than appointed by legislators, and also bringing participatory budgeting to the police force, where people can actually control how some of the budget is spent and allocated. If they want to have the police spend more money on body cameras instead of body armors, they can do that. Forcing police to actually live in New York City instead of in New York City or the surrounding counties, and then eventually getting to a place where we start to pull from this model I really like a lot called the Civilian-Led Policing Project, which really pushes more power into communities.
That's awesome, and it brings to mind the community of Richmond, California, where under the leadership of a Green mayor, Gail McLaughlin at the time, they brought their death rate at the hands of police it went plummeting, and they did many of the things that you named. They instituted community-based policing. They did trainings to ensure that police are using nonviolent conflict resolution kinds of techniques. They got the cops out of their cars and onto bicycles so they would be in the community, getting to know the community. They hired people who look like the community, and they got police to actually live in the community, including the chief of police. And it was really proof of principle that when you do the right things, it worked. So, I know. So all really, really great ideas. I'm going to, let's see, a couple more words, if you would, about education, just so that people know how you're facing this crisis in our schools and the school-to-prison pipeline and the big push towards high-stakes testing and pushing for pen and paper tests rather than real person-to-person learning and community-based learning. What are your thoughts about the schools?
Yeah, I can give a couple of thoughts. One would be that New York City public schools suffer from a lack of funding, and there's two ways to go about that. One would be to reclaim, the state owes us $2 billion. There was a suit in 2006 that declared the state owes the city $2 billion for our schools, which has not been paid yet. And in addition to that, there's also the problem of charter schools, which siphon funding from the public sector and put them in the private sector. So I'm staunchly against those, looking to end that loss of revenue and make sure it stays inside public schools. And for high-stakes testing, I am a high-stakes testing teacher. I'm an SAT teacher, ACT teacher, so that's how I make my bread by day. And so I know for a fact that those tests put unnecessary stress on students and parents and also exacerbate racial divides. I mean, the people that do well in these tests are the ones that can afford a tutor, and that skews to one demographic. So there are alternatives I'm looking into. One involves just like passive testing, where students, if they're doing their homework online often, that can be used as a every once in a while way to test their progress and evaluate them that way, which is, I think, and there's tons of alternatives to high stakes testing, but ultimately I think we need to move away from it.
Awesome. Great. And then before we go to unity among different political and activist groups, unity across movements, and your campaign is such a great example of that. But first, let's just tell people, how they can find out more about your campaign, how they can support, volunteer, door to door, I'm sure you're doing, but for the national audience out there that can't go door to door for you in New York City, in your district, but might want a phone bank, tell people how they can help your campaign, and what is the best website for people to go to for your general campaign page?
Everyone can just check out jabari2017.nyc. That's, again, my name, the year, .nyc, the city, and sign up to volunteer. Donate is always helpful, and that's going to be the hub. And if you live in New York City, knocking on doors is the most effective way to build turnout and help us win. But if you don't, phone banking is helpful. And again, donate.
Awesome, great. So people can go to Jabari, J-A-B as in boy, A-R-I 2017.NYC. Did I get that right?
Perfect,
Okay.
Jill.
Good. Okay, great. So you can go there, sign up, support, help this campaign get traction, because as frustrating and terrifying as things are in the bigger world out there, remember, we have the power. We are the 99%. So if democracy has anything to do with this, we can actually win the day. They would like you to feel powerless and hopeless. But the reality is that we are powerful, and we have some really powerful candidates who can win the day, and who, once in office, can just transform our lives, starting here at the local level. So sign up and show up, and let's make this happen. Say a few words, Jabari, about how people are coming together using the Green Party umbrella, campaigns like yours to provide that unstoppable unified force.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting this campaign to turn into super glue on the left, but it's really been an attractive force. I mean, the Green Party and socialist organizations, DSA has come full, like the entire national has come with full momentum behind the campaign. Socialist Alternative at the national level endorsed the campaign. And about a week ago, we actually got the endorsement of Our Revolution, like Bernie Sanders' political movement. So it's great that all four of these are coming together. I'm not sure if there's any other campaign where all four organizations are coming together, but I hope it's not just this campaign in the future, because the left is still small. I mean, it's powerful, and it's the necessary ideology to save humanity, but we need to stick together, and sometimes sectarian fighting happens, but I'm really honored that this campaign has been able to bring these groups together, and I hope this continues in the future.
That's so exciting, and we're seeing the Democratic Party, split between its more progressive base, kind of the Bernie Sanders base, but the reality of its leadership and its funding, which refuses to stop corporate contributions, which refuses, the reform candidates for the DNC, which refuses to support Medicare for all, and so on. So, we're seeing the split in the Democratic Party. We're certainly seeing incredible fragmentation in the Republican Party, where you had, Donald Trump is now, at war with Steve Bannon out there in the field, and the candidates that they're supporting, and and having majorities, and actually super majorities in Congress, they still can't pass anything. It's amazing.
It shows the poverty of their ideology and their ideas. Totally,
yes, and the mountain of their riches is kind of like proportional. Their actual souls here. They can't bring anything together because they're really not a real party. They're really just a storefront, I think, for multinational corporations. And the left really is, where people are. And so many of Trump's supporters were people who would have voted for Bernie Sanders had there been a truly progressive agenda to vote for. So it's not rocket science about how we can reach out to people who are hurting. And that's really across the political spectrum. And many people who are voting Republican, mainly because they're sick of the political system as they know it. And they were voting against the Democrat, not really for Donald Trump. So we can do it. And it's with powerful, strong leaders like yourself. So let me jump here to a couple questions. And again, reminding our viewers, please like this conversation and share it so that we can get the word out and build the power. So Christopher McGann says, Jill bro here. Well, hi back to you. Rosa Fang, bravo to all of us for staying in the arena and fighting. Michael Riley, hello from Bushwick. Esteban Duran, Jabari is my hero. Kieran Badwell saying, good luck, Jabari. So to our questions. Craig Cayetano says, I'm so glad Jabari got an endorsement from Our Revolution. I've been saying we need to work together through direct action in our community. We need to keep the momentum going forward, elect progressives. However, Our Revolution also needs to consider endorsing Akeem Browder and Seth Caperdale running for governor in New Jersey, and Akeem Browder for mayor in New York City. Thank you, Craig, for that comment. Let me go on here. Pete Sounds wants to know, are there any rallies coming up for you, Jabari?
Oh, no rallies planned. Right now, really door knocking. Rallies are fun, but don't always turn out the votes. But you can, if you're in New York, please do come by the office and grab a sheet and knock on some doors. That would be super helpful.
Tell people where that office is.
Yeah, it's at 565 Lincoln Place in Crown Heights. And come on by, and we can have a rally or two, and then we'll both go out. I'll knock on doors with you.
Awesome. And remember, you can find out about all that at jabari2017.nyc. And Michael Riley says, I signed in late. Can you let us know what neighborhoods are in your district, District 35?
Yeah. So if you know Brooklyn, think northeast of Prospect Park. So the center is Prospect Heights, and then north of that, Fort Greene and Clinton Hill, and then east of Prospect Heights going into Crown Heights.
Great. Ruben Sandoval says, Jabari, as city council candidate for New York City, how can you make sure that the people of New York City can hear or see more of a progressive green message that matches their needs?
I can be a bullhorn and a bully pulpit for the green message. You know, I'm honored to run as a green. I'll be very blatant that I'm running as a green, and I'll be blatant that we are about anti-corporate action, and we're for peace, and we're for local control, and that's in all of my platform, and it's going to be in the policies that I pursue. And I know for sure I will yank the city to the left from my position as a city council person. Awesome.
And I'll just add here to Ruben that you can help make sure that New York City hears this voice. And, it really does come back to us, because as people-powered campaigns running with the Green Party, or with DSA, or when it's a people-powered campaign, we are not rolling in dough, but we are rolling in people power. So we need you to go to jabari2017.nyc, and if you live in New York City, come on out and canvass. If you don't live in New York City, then you can help phone bank, and you can help throw support and get other people to throw support into this campaign as well. Kenneth Mejia. Hi, Kenneth. Kenneth is saying, hi, Jill and Jabari. Can you let us know how we can help from out of state? We have a great chance of getting Jabari, an amazing green, onto the city council, and we all can help. So I guess we answered that, but I just wanted to get Kenneth's voice out there, because Kenneth himself is such an amazing dynamo. And in fact, Kenneth will
I love Kenneth Mejia.
Yeah, Kenneth. We are honored to have Kenneth here on the Green News Network. He will be interviewing a candidate as well on Thursday night. So tune in on Thursday to hear from more amazing green candidates. Kenneth is not running at the moment, but I'm hoping he's going to run again for some important office. He's out in LA and ran a dynamite campaign for Congress in a recent special election. So stay tuned to Kenneth. Tune into the Green News Network on Thursday. David Jacobs says, Jill, I voted for you despite being shamed for doing so, and I plan on and Jabari. We used to pass out flyers in Times Square together, and now we're passing out campaign lit. Okay, so I'll let you say hi to your friend David Jacobs, Jabari. Any special?
Hi, David.
Awesome. Espan Giron says, Jabari, tell Jill about the pay cut you're taking.
Oh, I am slashing my salary to the median income of Brooklyn. So right now, the city council salary is around $148,000. I'm slashing mine. The average, the median person income is $48,000. And the funny thing is, some people, they're impressed by that. Some people freak out and they're like, how are you going to survive on $48,000? And I have to remind them that $48,000 is the median. So half of people in Brooklyn are living on less than that. And that's a good framework for the city we need to fix.
It absolutely is. And that's such a powerful framework to bring to the city council, the perspective that, represents really how people are having to live. So you're living the struggle too. And do you have thoughts about what you will do with the money that you are not accepting? That is, you're cutting it way down, and what will happen to the surplus?
Probably use it to hire additional staff members. I mean, we all know, sometimes you call your local politician, you email them, you get a response a month later, and that's that can be hard when we need, people are in dire straits with constituent services. They're getting kicked out of their homes. They've been abused by the police. They're worried about their schools. They have lots of concerns. So the more responsive my office can be, the better.
Awesome. Valerie Ross says, Jabari, I thought of your bravery in Charlottesville, Virginia, when I was on the stage in D.C. at that MOAR rally with Hawk and Black Lives Matter of Greater New York. Were you at Charlottesville, Jabari?
I was at Charlottesville.
What's that?
I was at Charlottesville. I got tear gassed. It was a very disappointing time to be in America. I'm a black man. I know America is racist, but I rarely often willingly go into the heart of the beast. But I really felt like I had to. These rallies need to be stopped at every moment. And I preach nonviolence, but you don't have to throw a punch to stop a rally. You can stand in their way. You can shout them down when they're trying to say hate speech. You can do nonviolent things. And I was there to make sure that was shut down. It was disgusting when I heard about it, and it was disgusting to be there.
Thank you so much for inspiring so many of us with your courage to stand up, which is absolutely what all of us need to do. And I have to say that, as a consequence of your courage and the courage of so many who stood up to white supremacy and racism and police violence in Charlottesville, and the neglect of the police who really sort of stood by and let that happen. The outrage of, all across America was incredible. And as a consequence of that, I think it was 1 week later, or maybe it was 2 weeks later in Boston, where the white supremacists were coming then to have their next show of force. Well, what happened? The community really mobilized and made it clear that hate is not welcome here. We didn't silence them. We didn't shut them down. But Boston came out in tens of thousands. It was somewhere around 30,000 people, maybe even more than that, who came out. And it was just a handful of the white supremacists who showed up. The police kept everybody separate, and the police also wisely made it a nonviolent demonstration. Nobody was allowed to bring weapons. Where do you get off allowing people to come with guns and metal
and tear gas? Like when I say it was tear gas, it wasn't by the police in Charlottesville. It was by the Nazis. They brought little pellets of tear gas and also pepper spray.
So what's with that? When we go to a climate march, we can't bring even a flagpole. We're or a back. So the Boston police laid those ground rules down too, which I thought was really great. And so they just, they met briefly and they left early, and they then went on to cancel 20 other rallies across the U.S. So thank you, Jabari, for leading the charge and for having the courage and the vision and the conviction to do that. And courage is contagious. So thank you for sharing it. So George Medlock says, you inspire me. I'm now running for city council in my neighborhood, and I plan to go farther than that. Thanks for setting the example and for not giving up. So we'll end with that uplifting comment that courage is courageous, that the courage is contagious, and that people are standing up not only against white supremacy and environmental racism and endless war, and endless student debt and healthcare devastation. People are standing up, and we are running for office, because what we do at the local level can begin to take back our communities and all the struggles that we're fighting. Let you close us out here, Jabari, with just some final thoughts, and again reminding people how we can support your campaign and get you elected. It's time to raise the bar of our expectations. It's not enough to just, as you said, stand and protest. It's not enough just for us to run great campaigns. We need to rally around our incredibly powerful leadership campaigns. Let's get them into office. This is a really powerful and extremely winnable campaign. Let's get behind it. Let's get Jabari into office. Close us out, Jabari.
I'm just going to say it's been really amazing for me, to be here, but also even out canvassing. I almost always meet people that have heard of the campaign or are excited about it, even just walking around the streets. I really hope that I am just one piece of a large wave of people that are sweeping into office and really moving us from a society that's oriented around profits and one that's oriented around people's needs and just basic human necessities, and making sure that we can actually live in harmony together. And I want to thank you again, Jill, for having me on. It is always a pleasure. I'm such a big fan. And if anybody wants to get involved with this campaign, it's jabari2017.nyc.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jabari, and thanks to all of you. Remember that we do have the power to create an America and a world that works for all of us. The power to create that world is right here, right now. It's in our hand. Green news is good news. We'll see you next week.